is probably the biggest part of the court case. YNW Melly officially has a trial date. On this date, we'll be finding out whether or not YNW Melly will be getting sentenced to life in prison. But with this new evidence that I will be sharing in this video, it does not look good for YNW Melly. We need to talk about this, so let's get straight into it. YNW Melly's trial is set to start on March 7th in 2022. This will be the biggest rapper-related court case that we have had in a long time. Prosecutors believe they've gathered enough evidence for the trial to start after a long 2 years. In the latest court hearing, prosecutors requested the Broward County judge to force YNW Melly to provide his DNA. This is in order to help solve the case, as they also asked for all of YNW Melly's body measurements as well. This means that they want the length of his arms, his legs, even his body weight to create a model of YNW Melly's body so they can recreate the scene of what they believe happened. Now, in the court documents, it states that in the vehicle where YNW Melly allegedly did the act towards 2 individuals, there was evidence left behind being a yellow jacket. This yellow jacket was analyzed by the Broward County Sheriff's Office's crime lab, and then a report was issued. Dated on September 2nd in 2021, the report indicates that Anthony Williams, aka YNW Sack Chaser, DNA was a part of the sample, and that there were 3 other potential...
Pause it. Head to bed, wake up in the morning, another day of summer. Seven in the morning. Let me have a look outside. Okay, it stopped snowing. Cool. Let's get changed. I'm talking out of character for a second. I'm gonna lose the multiplier skin from now on. So yeah, I'm gonna lose the multiplier skin in my mod menu, basically, because it has all type of clothes now. You know what I fucking mean? So yeah, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Let's head out. Let's chill here. Smoke a joint for the day and watch YouTube.
The contributor profiles are not eligible to be entered at this moment. The prosecutors want to prove that YNW Melly is guilty in this case by using a DNA test, which in the court of law is very hard evidence to beat. So once this was brought up in court, YNW Melly was seen exiting the court looking very concerned. That's when this updated mugshot was then released of the rapper, who looks defeated. New evidence photos were released in the latest court hearing as well. In this photo, this is actually where everyone was sitting inside of the Jeep when the so-called drive-by occurred. This explains why prosecutors want YNW Melly's body measurements due to him sitting in the back seat of the driver's side. YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser, which are the 2 that sadly passed, are the 2 men sitting on the right side of the vehicle. Now in the second official document, it states, and I quote, "Then also, we have a video of Mr. Demons admitting to doing an act towards 2 individuals in the head." Now I had to change a few of the words in that statement, but you understand what I'm trying to say. This is the piece of evidence that I'm very worried about, as there is a video of Melly talking about this incident on a video. And in that same video, he admits to doing it. So in the next court document, it states this. This video was on Mr. Demon's cell phone, which was brought to my office by Jameson Francis. And that is how we had that, and that was all of the evidence that Your Honor has. So this is where it gets interesting. First off, Mr. Demon's in these documents is Y&W Melly. Strangely enough, that's his last name. And in case you didn't know who Jameson Francis is, this is Y&W Melly's manager, known as 100K Management. Jameson is a manager for tons of rappers such as King Von, Y&W Melly, and many others in the industry. The entire time he was in jail, that was until law enforcement put out a warrant for the cell phone, so if he never turned it in, he would have been arrested for tampering with evidence. Now allegedly, law enforcement can do something called a data extract. This means that they can pull everything that was ever on a certain cell phone. This means that deleted text messages, deleted photos, even Snapchats will be brought back, and law enforcement will now be able to use that evidence against Y&W Melly in court. Now that is very concerning, as the next court document states that the cell phone evidence is probably the biggest part of the court case, which I definitely have to agree with the alleged video of Melly admitting to doing it, as well as text messages that Melly sent to his girlfriend at the time this all went down. Now the next court document also stated this, and I quote, "These particular cell phones, which were both iPhone 10s, were on the T-Mobile network. And so T-Mobile has a very interesting feature where it will tell you the environment that the cell phone is in. So from these cell phone records, I can tell you the exact moment Demons got out of the car and staged the drive-by location. So this is huge evidence as well. And why this is so big is because Y&W Melly took 40 minutes to get Juvie and Sack Chaser medical attention after the so-called drive-by occurred. So with law enforcement now having a tool where they can go back in time, use Y&W Melly's cell phone that was in his pocket as a GPS tracking device, they'll be able to track all of Y&W Melly's movements the moment everything went down. So they can actually follow if they pulled their vehicle into a side parking lot to stage the drive-by. So after hearing all of that evidence, make sure you listen to the timeline that the courtroom laid out about the day Sack Chaser and Juvie sadly passed and piece it all together. So it starts on October 26 in 2018 at roughly 3:30 a.m. Y&W Melly, Juvie, Sack Chaser, and Portland were all at a recording studio. They were getting late night work done for Y&W Melly's new project, and that was until their session was over. Once they were finished, they hopped inside of their Jeep and started heading home. The driver of the vehicle being Corleone Henry, otherwise known as Y&W Portland, had Y&W Melly sitting directly behind him. Now Y&W Portland ended up driving on a back road home. This was to skip early morning traffic. Now while law enforcement doesn't know exactly what happened inside of the vehicle, the theory is the vehicle was pulled over to the side of the road and a distraction was made to catch Y&W Juvie and Y&W Sack Chaser off guard. While they were distracted, that's when Y&W Melly did the act towards them in the vehicle. After it was all said and done, the Jeep was allegedly brought into a side parking lot where nobody was in sight and nobody could hear a firearm being used. That would be where Y&W Melly and Y&W Portland allegedly roughed up the vehicle to make it appear as if a drive-by happened. That would be Melly and Portland's excuse for this entire thing happening when they finally bring Sack Chaser and Juvie to the hospital. Now right there, that could explain why it took 40 minutes to get Juvie and Sack Chaser medical attention, and when you add in all of evidence that I shared earlier in the video, it's starting to look very concerning for Y&W Melly. And you have to remember as well, they were on a back road home. This means there was no street cameras, not really any other vehicles driving by, so there was no witnesses. But let me know what you guys think of it down below in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like. With these new updates in the NBA Youngboy case, he is now looking at facing life in prison. We need to talk about this, so let's get straight into it. It was announced by the court that a judge has now ruled NBA Youngboy to be too reckless and dangerous as a human being to be out in the free world, but they will allow NBA Youngboy to be on house arrest due to an overcrowded jail. Now, NBA Youngboy was indicted by a grand jury on March 10th. He was charged with 1 count of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, as well as 1 count of possession of a firearm that's not registered on the National Firearms Registration List. Due to those official charges, a judge deemed NBA Youngboy not suitable to be out on the streets until he beats his case. But in the courtroom that day, 2 serious photos of NBA Youngboy were shown. In these photos, NBA Youngboy is seen holding a firearm while taking a photo with a minor, as well as flashing around a firearm sitting on the hood of a vehicle which had a magazine inside of it. Now, after the courtroom saw these photos, that's when the judge quickly denied NBA Youngboy's bond request until his lawyers were able to set up a deal to get him released on house arrest until his trial begins. Now, the jail NBA Youngboy was being held in for the last few months started to become overcrowded. This worked in his favor heavily, as he was not supposed to even be given house arrest due to how serious his case is. But here is where it gets very concerning for NBA Youngboy. He was arrested for these charges last year. He was granted bail until the trial starts, and when the trial was ready to begin, NBA Youngboy was a no-show. This means that NBA Youngboy had a warrant out for his arrest, and knowing his priors record, law enforcement were not going to be taking this lightly. Law enforcement ended up calling up the FBI, who hopped on the case for the search for NBA Youngboy. They even created an operation team titled Never Free Again. This operation team ended up setting up a stakeout outside of NBA Youngboy's house, waiting for him to leave his property. They ended up catching NBA Youngboy leaving his mansion, and he started driving onto the highway. The FBI agents then tailed NBA Youngboy's car onto the highway. They directed NBA Youngboy to pull his vehicle over. That's when he started to actually listen, pull his vehicle to the side of the highway. NBA Youngboy waited for the FBI agent to have a complete stop on his vehicle. When doing so and the agent opening up his car door, NBA Youngboy floored it down the highway, starting a massive high-speed chase. It was described as a GTA-like event going on a public highway. NBA Youngboy was swerving in and out of lanes, dodging traffic, until he ended up running into a lot of it. This made NBA Youngboy swerve off of the highway, hitting the regular streets. When driving through the regular streets, Youngboy then hit more traffic. This made Youngboy hop out of his vehicle and started running from an FBI agent. When they figured out Youngboy was on foot, FBI agents and law enforcement set up what's called a perimeter circle. This means that they had FBI agents and a massive circle around the area they knew Youngboy was in, and they would all close in on him by using K9 units and allegedly a helicopter. They ended up finding NBA Youngboy in a backyard of a fan's house, and funny enough, this fan ended up catching on camera NBA Youngboy running from an FBI agent. NBA Youngboy was then arrested in the process for the court case of him flashing around a firearm in public and having his mansion raided, where they found 14 firearms inside of his home. This was already enough charges to possibly have Youngboy in prison for years. Allegedly, Youngboy would catch 1 to 3 years per firearm that turns out to be his. Law enforcement would figure out which firearms are his due to them looking for fingerprints on them, and if the fingerprints were the same as NBA Youngboy's, then they would try figuring out where he purchased it, and so on. The high-speed chase with the FBI in the vehicle could have ended very serious with someone innocent being involved. This again could land NBA Youngboy in prison for 5 years itself. Many mistakes were made by NBA Youngboy, and it's all going to be added up to the end result of his court case. Law enforcement were very happy that they arrested NBA Youngboy. As I'd said earlier, they had an operation team made specifically for NBA YoungBoy. They're looking to put him behind bars for 10 years in prison for the crimes that he committed. This starts from NBA YoungBoy being arrested around 14 to 16 times within the last few years. You can almost make a scrapbook of all of his mugshots. Pretty crazy. Now, when NBA YoungBoy was told about the entire law enforcement operation team made for him, he released this message while behind bars. He said, and I quote, "I can leave my kids millions of dollars to divide, but I can't give them the time that they truly deserve. Nobody understands me, they never did. Sometimes I don't even understand myself, but that's fine, because I'm okay. I'm not looking for you to feel sorry for me, but I do ask for one thing, and that is for you to let me suffer in peace and tell Miss Wendy Williams I say she has a good soul and that she's a beautiful woman. I can see through all of the bad comments thrown at her. Tell her to count her blessings and stay in good spirits. NBA YoungBoy." So while law enforcement are trying to lock NBA YoungBoy up for 10 plus years, it's starting to seem as if he'll be sentenced to an even longer time in prison. And you may be wondering, why does this all matter when NBA YoungBoy was at least given house arrest? You have to remember, it was due to an overcrowded jail, and NBA YoungBoy can afford some of the best lawyers that money can buy. And just because he was given house arrest does not mean that he's just let free off of his court case. His court trial is set to start very soon, and for this, it's going to get very ugly for YoungBoy. There's a reason why he's right now recording as much music as possible in his house every single day. In one of NBA YoungBoy's last court cases, he was already told that if he gets in any trouble with the law in the future, he will be finally getting sentenced to prison to finally teach him a lesson on breaking the law. But I'm very curious to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that NBA YoungBoy will be getting sentenced to some time in prison? Remember, he most likely will, and it's already been stated by many lawyers online. If you want...
Then half you motherfuckers scary motherfuckers. You hiding behind fake ass motherfucking pages. My face is on there. I ain't hiding behind shit. So post from your real page so I can get in your ass. How about that?
You are now tuned into YouTube's favorite, Lionel B.
The Lion B Show.
So it looks like the pressure kind of mounts up, man. Like, and I definitely understand the homie, y'all. Just want to let y'all know, man, I do know this homie personally. Sean Fontino, man, a.k.a. Solo, man. He was one of the main characters from the Grand Theft Auto 5 series. You know what I'm saying? We actually got some work in the future that we're actually working on, man. But it looks like, man, the pressures of the industry definitely gets to people sometime. You know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be crazy, y'all. Like, I can't even understand where people really feel like, you know, just because you're a celebrity or you have a platform, you're not a real person and you cannot get them hands. So, man, look, there's some footage, man, of Sean Fontino, a.k.a. Franklin, from the game. I know all y'all kids play this video game, my kids included. You know, every time they FaceTime the homie, they get excited. Like, oh, this is Franklin from the video game. But apparently, man, he had a meltdown, y'all. And you already know there's a new add-on for Grand Theft Auto 5 called A Contract. I'm excited to play it, man. It comes out in like 3 days. Ready to get it in on this video game, y'all. But apparently, they rubbed the homie the wrong way. And he came out and he had some choice words for the fans, saying certain things and thinking he ain't no real G just because you see him in the video game. Y'all check this out, man.
Good morning. I got 160-something thousand followers, man. Narrow it down to probably 6,000. How about that? How about 160,000 of you motherfuckers get the fuck on? Do that if you feel I'm posting wrong, nigga. I'm a black man, nigga. I'm a black man. So don't come on my motherfucking page with your nice guy shit because you want me to keep posting Grand Theft Auto. Motherfucker, send me a check. How about that? Find a way to send me a fat ass check, motherfucker, then I'll shut the fuck up. Other than that, leave me the fuck alone. Get off my fucking page and accept my rants. Then half you motherfuckers scary motherfuckers. You hiding behind fake ass motherfucking pages. My face is on there. I ain't hiding behind shit, so post from your real page so I can get in your ass. How about that? Scary motherfucker. You scary motherfuckers. Y'all scary motherfuckers. And some of you Uncle Tom motherfuckers is scary too. House niggas. Tired of playing a nice guy. You think Melee went on the rant, motherfucker? Get a load of this nigga right here. Y'all don't know me. You do not know me. I've been being cool, playing the role for this motherfucker right here. For y'all motherfuckers. I've been playing the role for this nigga right here. Just being nice because of Grand Theft Auto. Because of Grand Theft Auto. Fuck this motherfucker. This game, nigga.
Oh, hi. It's the next day and I got me some pizza. I eat inside basically. So, yeah. As you can see, I bought me a new car. Let's chill over here.
With her, and FMB Long Money would come to mediate the situation. Antoine would allegedly walk away, and FMB Long Money would follow him. Bam! He would get back in his silver car and leave. On June 12th, he would go down for it. Now let me just clarify this. This is what was released to the public. My words are a reflection of alleged actions. This has not yet been proven. FMB Long Money would talk about it with Say Cheese. Since this interview, FMB Long Money's career has continued to progress, and he's hoping for the best result in the courtroom. His career has given a spotlight to the Scoot Up movement through his lyrics, but those aren't just words. Scoot Up are really about what they rap about. November 13th, 2018. A Lamar High School student named DeLindsay Mack would be at school with his girlfriend Kiana. But she wasn't really his girlfriend. What I mean by that is she was asked by 103 to walk with him outside after school. Now mind you, he's associated with YSB, so they would walk to the parking lot of a nearby church. That's when 103's Kendrick Johnson, also known as Lil Daddy, would pull up and bam! Here's where things get interesting. DeLindsay Mack had struggled in school for the past few years, prompting him to skip a lot and to not do very well. He was going to school in the 3rd Ward, but then his parents moved him to Lamar High for a better education. And that's where he met his girlfriend Kiana. Kiana brought him joy, and his parents say that he was so excited about his new relationship. His uncle even says that he would wake up early just to see her before school in the morning. Well, with this description of her, you'd think she was the best thing for him. And that's why she wasn't even thought about as a suspect. But that would change after Kendrick Johnson would go down. She would strangely go visit him, and that made police raise an eyebrow. So they would get permission to look through Kendrick Johnson's phone. There, they would find a text conversation between him and Kiana from November 13th. They even found conversations from weeks before. They were plotting this for weeks. This would lead to her arrest. This right here should be a lesson to all the young dudes watching. Stay on your toes, think with logic, and look out for red flags, because love can be blinding, but manipulation can always be behind it. You never know what's really going on. Well, this event would turn everything up even further. Big news would come 2 weeks later. November 27th, 2018. Rappers Kenny Lou and Ghost would head to Club Onyx in their Mercedes sedan. They would pull into the parking lot, and bam! This here would be the saddest news for Scoot Up, because Kenny Lou and Ghost really put them on the map, and many say that they were on their way to having a major career in music. February 22nd, 2019. YSB would have a party way out in South Houston, at least 30 minutes south of the city. At this party would be rapper It's 13's brother named Braxton. Bang! These were the most important events that have happened, but don't think it's everything that's happened, because statistics show differently. Honestly, I don't really want to share the numbers that YSB and 103 have accumulated. You guys can look it up if you're interested. It's pretty bad. Maybe the highest levels that I've ever seen on Swamp Stories. And on that note, that's going to conclude this episode of Swamp Stories. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Also, you can follow the Swamp Stories Instagram page where you can request an episode. another episode of Swamp Stories. For this episode, we head back to the Bay Area. This video was requested over 1,000 times, and every time I would hear, do another Oakland video, I'd be like, yo, I already did Oakland. But then I went back and watched the video and realized how much I didn't cover. I also realized how far I've come. Like, wow, that first video was low quality. So I decided that Oakland deserves another episode. But this is more than a regular episode. This video will dive deeper than any video I've ever made. You'll really get a taste of Oakland after watching this video. You'll also get to see what's behind everything you see in the news every other day. You'll see the old Oakland all the way up to the new Oakland. Let me paint the picture for you. This right here is history in the making. So let's get to the video. When people think of the Bay Area, they always think of San Francisco first. Then they think of Silicon Valley. Then after that, probably Napa. Well, it's pretty much always been that way, even since the days of the gold rush. San Francisco was always the attractive destination city. And Oakland, not so much. Oakland has always been the blue-collar city, going all the way back to the 1920s. That's when Chrysler and Ford opened up factories in East Oakland, prompting Oakland to be called the Detroit of the West. Because it's always been overshadowed by San Francisco, Oakland has always had a chip on its shoulder. But more than that, it has an element of toughness and strength, and that really began in the 1960s. That's when Oakland began having a new identity, and some locals were not thrilled about it. A new era in Oakland had begun.
Purchase your tracks today.
Figures such as Huey and Bobby began their movement. This movement wouldn't last long though, and Oakland started to head down the wrong path. The 1980s brought a whole new element to the streets of Oakland. The nationwide era of, how do I say this? Rock climbing, but without the climbing? Yeah, the thing that people use to, you guys get the point. But it wasn't all bad, because this era is when Oakland's hip-hop reign began. Rappers Too Short, MC Hammer, Drew Down, Shock G, and Richie Rich all came along and gave Oakland the national spotlight. They all had a unique style and represented the Bay Area to the fullest. This can be remembered as the G-Funk era. But after this, a new trend came along in Oakland.
Oakland, California, baby. Welcome to the Bay.
Let me introduce you to the hyphy movement. First, you're probably thinking, what is hyphy? Hyphy, to be extremely rowdy, excited, and energetic. And that perfectly describes Oakland. If you want to hear what the hyphy movement sounded like, check out Mr. Fab, Keek the Sneak, and Tracks a Million. So hopefully this gave you guys a taste of Oakland and its history and culture, but I know that's not what you came here for. So let's get into the good stuff. And as much as Oakland is a vibrant and fun city, it also has a darker side. A side that we will cover from top to bottom. But before we get into it, let me run the intro. Oakland is having its worst year since 1992. It's November, and the city has over 125 homicides. This gives it one of the top 5 highest rates in the country. Many Bay Area residents are wondering what in the world is going on. But here's the thing, it's really not all that complicated. They tell you everything you need to know in their music. Now, I assume that most of you aren't as bored as I am, so you probably have no interest in looking into it yourself. But me? Yeah, I took the time to put everything together. Why, might you be asking? I really don't know, it's kind of sad. But either way, I'll break it down in a simple manner for everyone to understand. Oakland pretty much has 3 sides, the 2s, 3s, and 4s. But in order for it to make sense, let's head back to the start. It all started in 2002 with a man named Leon Wiley and his friend DeMarcus Rawls. Both were residents of the Acorn Apartments in West Oakland. Leon Wiley's nickname was Tweezy. In Tweezy's name was known all over Oakland, and not for good reasons. In fact, he was feared by most, if not all. Well, it all started when Tweezy fell out with a group of guys right down the street. About 4 blocks away from Acorn, you have Campbell Village. Acorn and Campbell were at odds over some minor disagreements. Well, Tweezy would put that issue to sleep. Literally. Bang! Due to their reputation, Tweezy started calling him and his friends the Nutcase, and then they became known as the 400. And their game plan was Shaquille O'Neal. Dominate. They were not going to let anyone get in their way. It didn't matter how old, what, where, and when. The Nutcase were going to get their way no matter what. But they quickly realized that it was hard to do it alone. They needed to add to their roster. And that's exactly what they did. They made allies with East Oakland's strongest sections. Their first addition was Bossland. Boss stands for Birch, Olive, and Sunnyside, which are the streets they cover. But then, Nutcase added 88th shortly after, but more specifically, the Hillside Apartments. This was a new phenomenon in Oakland. It used to be that everyone had their own identity, so this teaming up stuff was brand new. And for the next 8 years, Nutcase would continue expanding. They would add an area called 55th, also known as 557. They're located right up the street from Seminary. So let me break down the original
Fuck off, Ed.
So let me break down the original Nutcase. It was Acorn in West Oakland, Bossland, 88th, and 55th. And at this point, it was just unfair. It was like when Kevin Durant joined the Warriors. Like a ridiculous all-star roster. So naturally, the rest of Oakland was like, hey, we need to team up as well, or else we will not have a chance out here. But that wouldn't start happening until November 6, 2010. That's the day that two 18-year-olds Ed Hampton and Nario Jackson are sitting in their car in West Oakland. That's when Nicholas Harris pulls up, and bam! So that's when West Oakland's ghost town decided that enough is enough. They would band together with the rest of West Oakland, except for Acorn, of course. And together, they would call themselves ENT, Ed Nario Team. They would also adopt the nickname Stubby and the number 300. So let me clarify again. 400 is Nutcase and 300 is Stubby ENT. So Stubby would continue to expand as well, as they needed strongholds in the east to match the case expansion. So this was the start of 300 versus 400. So let's get into it. Well, the new generation of case would face internal affairs before anything. April 21st, 2012. A group of teens are hanging out at the park on 77th. That's when Shantae Daniels gets into a disagreement with his close friend. Bam! January 7th, 2013. Tyrante Mickens would be sitting in his car on 77th and Hamilton. Bam! This right here would be a huge loss for Case. You hear them talk about him all the time, still to this day. Well, they would pop out a few months later, and in a major way. June 27th, 2013. This is the recount of a woman named Michelle Nelson, as she told OPD back in 2014. Stubby's William Ward, also known as Wheeze, was living on 84th at the time, and that's where he and other Stubby would hang out. Well, on June 27th, he would be outside with a group of friends. Well, Michelle notices that his friends vanish off behind him, and Wheeze would be standing out there alone for a few seconds. That's when a blue car pulls up, and bang! The aftermath. This is when things get interesting. A friend of William Ward would say that a girl called him right after and told him that it was a man named DeMonte Starks, also known as Biggs. This was still not enough, so a man named Eddie Williams would volunteer to help out under one condition. Eddie wanted them to help his family out with legal issues. Both sides would agree. Eddie Williams would wear a wire and be placed with DeMonte Starks. Eddie would ask DeMonte what happened on June 27th. DeMonte, who thought Eddie was his friend, would tell him everything. So Eddie would leave after getting what he wanted. He would run yelling, "I got him! We did it! We did it!" And he's right. They did do it. August 14th, 2014. Case's Norman Lewis, also known as Norm, would be on 80th and Alder. Bam! Now, this wasn't nearly close to everything that's happened over this time span, but it was really the most important events. So let's skip ahead to what's known as the fourth generation, the new era of Oakland. Case and Stubby are pretty much everywhere now. So let me break down the new era. Let's start with Case. In West Oakland, Case covers Acorn, which is represented by Yid, and most importantly, Kato. He recently got famous for his hit song, Go Off. Then, in North Oakland, Case covers Ice City, which is represented by Lil Rod and Lil Friesel. This is actually the neighborhood that Marshawn Lynch is from. Now let's head to East Oakland. Well, this is where it gets crazy. They now cover most of the 20s, also known as the Dubs. They're represented by Oakland's two biggest rappers, Offset Jim and All Black. Then, they cover an area of East Oakland called Fairfax. They're represented by Fredo Bags and Kai Benji, who's from High Street. Those two are pretty much top dogs right now in Oakland. Then you have the 69th Village, who's represented by Repossession Rin. Then, Case also covers the 88th Hillside Apartments, which is represented by Yachty Benji. And yo, this is how he looked a year ago, and this is how he looks now. He went from Charles Barkley to Sam Cassell in just 1 year. Then, finally, you have Bossland, which is represented by Bossland Chris, Zayel, DNI Mike, and Capolo. Wow, so that's all 400 now. Case covers all that area, but Stubby has expanded as well. They cover Ghost Town in West Oakland, 77th, 73rd, and the Alphabets. The Alphabets are A through D Street in East Oakland. Stubby is represented by a rapper named Spidey. Well, Stubby is no longer alone in this battle. A new number has risen in Oakland, 200, also known as Two Letters. They are close allies with Stubby, so essentially 200 and 300 are the same thing. Well, 200 are represented by a rapper named Cold Game, who's from San Leandro. All Black would call him out on a song saying, they bang in the suburbs like they Cold Game. But 200 also have a rapper named Ace Rico, and he's from the same neighborhood as All Black. So all of this is messy. But Case say that Ace Rico is from the suburbs of San Leandro anyway. Anyways, 200 occupy the Alvin Groom's apartments in East Oakland as well. So if you look at a map, this is what Oakland looks like now. Everything has changed, so let's get into the important events. Well, actually, I'm not going to do the whole BAM thing, I'll just list off what happened. It's way too much to cover. Recently, some paperwork has come out on Spidey's name. In the paperwork, he allegedly tells what 4s and 3s mean. He also says that he cracks 4s. If this is true, do you guys think that this is okay or not? Did he violate the rules? Well, basically the whole Bay Area would think so, and Stubby would DP him. But clearly not everyone thought it wasn't okay, because he would hit the studio with San Francisco rapper Swervy. Yo! It's a paperwork convention. Anyways, all jokes aside, this situation is crazy, and we can only hope that it will resolve itself in some manner. It has gotten even crazier now that Sacramento CML Lavish D has sided with Case. You can see him in many of their music videos and vice versa, but Stubby was not a fan of this.
You know they need some help. They clicked out with lab gas.
Niggas way inside with it.
And on that note, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Swamp Stories. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Welcome back to another episode of Swamp Stories. For this episode, we do something brand new. But before we get to the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. The Instagram page was deleted, but you can DM this new account to request videos, or you can send an email, whatever you choose. Also, I want to mention that this video is for educational purposes only. This is all history and public information. So let's get into it. So you might be wondering, how did we get here? Well, I was scrolling through the comments and noticed a couple requests. Do Canada, do Vancouver. And my first reaction was, wait, are you joking? Canada? Canada? Like, what am I going to talk about? Maple syrup thieves? But then I thought to myself, maybe I should look into it. So I did my research, and wow, This one is interesting, and how come I've never heard about it? The answer is pretty simple. We have so much going on here, we tend to forget about our neighbors up north. We often assume that there's no problems up there, like it's some sort of unique paradise where everyone gets along perfectly. But that's just because we never hear about them. But in this video, you'll get to see a side of Canada that you never thought you would see. Before we dive into all that, let me paint the picture of Canada for you. Instead of states, Canada has 12 provinces, which are essentially the same thing. In this video, we will focus on Canada's westernmost province called British Columbia, also known as BC. In the bottom of BC, located right off the US border, is Vancouver. Technically, Vancouver was founded in 1886 by the British, but let me show love to the original residents. The Squamish tribe lived in the Vancouver area for thousands of years. Then the British discovered gold on the Fraser River, and we all know how this story goes. Over 100,000 British people began living in the area. Now home to 600,000 residents, Vancouver is known as a very wealthy, quiet city. It was actually ranked as one of the world's most livable cities. So overall, Vancouver is pretty nice. Aside from the 192 rainy days per year, yep, that's over half the year. So bring your umbrella or else you're gonna get drenched. And speaking of drenched, Vancouver has another side to it. And the statistics are nothing to laugh at. Let me list off some cities. San Francisco, New York City, San Diego, and Austin, Texas. Why do I bring up these American cities, you may be wondering? Well, Vancouver, Canada has a higher homicide rate than all of these cities. Whether you want to believe it or not, it's the truth. But things operate differently in Vancouver. Everything that happens has a reason, and you'll see why. It all works from the top to the bottom, with the bosses at the top making sure they can handle their business. Pretty much like the old school Italians. So let me introduce you to the Don Corleones of Vancouver, Canada. But before we get into it, let me run the intro.
Psych!
Let me introduce you to the Independent Soldiers, also known as the IS. They originally formed in the Sunset neighborhood of South Vancouver. Initially, they called themselves the Sunset Boys. They were mostly made up of Punjabis. For those who don't know, they originate in a northern region of India called Punjab, and they moved to Vancouver in the 1960s. They now make up nearly 10% of Vancouver's population. Well anyways, by 1992, they would begin calling themselves the IS to show independence from other organizations in Vancouver. Together, the IS had one goal: profits, and they were going to do whatever it took to get rich. They had three main leaders: Manjeet, also known as Peter, Amarjeet, and Gorinder. Forgive me if I messed that up, I don't mean to. But these leaders made strong rules that were not to be messed with. First rule is zero tolerance for any use of substances. Zero. The second rule is talking to officers. Any IS affiliate or member is strongly prohibited from ever speaking to the law, under any circumstances. And lastly, you are never allowed to disrespect your associates. A violation of any of these rules is going to result in termination, or even worse, you will end up in the Pacific Ocean swimming with the fishes. There's a reason for these strict rules. Leaders see these rules as key to success in the underground, and in the early 1990s, this was absolutely true. The IS were making bank, and their main source of income was, let's say they were pharmacists. Really good pharmacists. The IS were expert pharmacists, but just like everyone says, more money, more problems. When more money is coming in, jealousy follows. Always, no matter what. In 1994, Internal Affairs would break up South Vancouver. Within the next 2 years, all three IS leaders would pass away. Many would speculate that this was caused by their internal affair with the elite faction of the IS. But just like any organization, new leaders would step up and take their places. The internal affairs were somehow resolved, and it was back to business as usual. But that's when competition came along in Vancouver. The IS were no longer the only factors. Let me not get ahead of myself. I'll explain it like this. Everything came down to the Dosanjh brothers, Ron and Jimmy Dosanjh. They were the leaders of the IS in all their subgroups. They had a young superstar named Bindi Johal. He made a name for himself as a teenager for bad behavior and was expelled from many high schools. Despite this, he was extremely popular. Everyone looked up to him. Maybe for his personality, but most likely for his money and swagger. Bindi Johal was known for making money. Plain and simple. You've really caught the attention of the Dosanjh brothers, they would bring him in to work under their wing. Bindi was known to bring in $70,000 to $90,000 per week while working for them. But when Jimmy Dosanjh would go to jail, Bindi saw a golden opportunity. He realized that on his own, he could make way more money. He didn't feel like he needed the protection anymore. So Bindi Johal would do exactly that. But first, he would make sure that there were no problems with IS. Because remember, as long as you don't disrespect them, you don't violate the rules. And so for the time being, everything would be okay between Bindi and the Dosanjh brothers. So let's head to the mid-90s. Bindi Johal began making $500,000 to $900,000 per week on his own. Now let me grab the calculator. That's between $26 million and $47 million per year. This dude, Bindi Johal, was balling. He was making Steph Curry money. But wait, let me put this into perspective. In 1995, Shaquille O'Neal's salary was $5.7 million. So Bindi Johal was balling more than any NBA player. He was swagged out too. Bindi was really dripped out. Look at the dude. And along with the money, Bindi loved attention. He wanted to be a celebrity, so he would constantly go to the club in brand new supercars with tons of cash. And this new lavish persona may have started